Hello my dear friends, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Top Lesson for you. Dear friends, as you know that we are discussing about the structure of the human eye. So up to now we have recorded about 29-30 lectures regarding the anatomy of the human eye. We recorded about the sclera, the choroidal layer, the eye, the ciliary body, the iris, and we have recorded about the cornea. And we have also recorded all the important things about your the third and the most important layer of the eye, that is called the retina. So we have full anatomy of all of them. You can go and watch those lectures to have a clear concept of the anatomy of the human eye. Now friends, in the last 4 or 5 lectures I have recorded about the lens of your eye. And what is the lens, what is its structure. So I have tried my best to fully record everything about the lens. We have covered that in about 5 lectures. I hope you have watched those lectures also. Now in the eye, inside the eye, we have two fluid systems, right? Inside the eye we have two fluid systems. One fluid system is present behind the lens. I would just simply say one fluid system is present behind the lens here, and one fluid system is present in front of the lens behind the cornea, right? So this fluid system which is present here, it is a viscous proteinaceous fluid. This is called vitreous fluid. Vitreous fluid, right? And the fluid which is present in front of the lens and behind the cornea here in this aqueous chamber, this fluid present there is called the aqueous fluid. So here we have our aqueous fluid, and in this lecture we are going to discuss about this aqueous fluid, its composition, its preparation, where is it prepared, and how does it drains out of the body, which is very important. We should know, and why this fluid is present here, why, what is its importance, right? So we have here in this area behind the cornea and in front of the lens, right? This is your lens, right? So in front of the lens and behind the cornea we have a very specialized fluid system that is called the aqueous fluid. So let me write its name also here. Aqueous fluid, or we say aqueous humor. We call it aqueous humor. Right friends. So now we are discussing about the aqueous humor. Before going to the aqueous humor, my dear friends, let's talk something about this chamber, that what is actually that chamber. Let me draw a human eye here, a very small human eye, right? Like this. You know that here is your cornea, right? And then you know well that here is your ciliary body, and also here is your ciliary body, and then your iris, and then here you have your lens, right? And then there are the suspensory ligaments or the zonules of Zen present there, right? Now we have a posterior chamber in the eye and an interior chamber. So this will be your posterior chamber, or we say this is the vitreous chamber and this is the aqueous chamber, right? Let me write it here. This is aqueous chamber, right? And this is vitreous chamber. Okay, we are talking about the aqueous chamber. In this aqueous chamber there is a fluid which is called the aqueous fluid or aqueous humor. Now this chamber is divided into two sub chambers, right? One is the anterior chamber, right? and one is the posterior chamber. We should have basics of it, then we will go in detail of the aqueous humor. Now look carefully. This is your cornea, right? And this is your iris, right? Now in front of the iris and behind the cornea, my dear friends, in front of the iris and behind the cornea, this chamber, this fluid-filled chamber is called the anterior chamber, right? And behind the iris and in front of the lens, this chamber is called your posterior chamber, right? So here is your posterior chamber. Now aqueous chamber, aqueous chamber is divided into anterior chamber and posterior chamber. Anterior chamber is actually present behind the cornea and in front of iris, and posterior chamber is present behind the iris and in front of the lens. And both of these chambers are filled with aqueous fluid, as I have shown here, aqueous fluid or aqueous humor. Now let's talk about the aqueous humor in detail. So guys, let's go for the detailed study of the aqueous humor or aqueous fluid. Now we have some important points we should know about the aqueous fluid or aqueous humor. As I told you that aqueous fluid is present in the aqueous chamber, and aqueous chamber is divided into two chambers. So first of all, what is aqueous chamber? Aqueous chamber is a fluid which is present in the space between the lens and cornea. You know that there was your cornea, right? And then there is your lens, right? So this space was filled by aqueous humor, and if you want to complete your diagram, you can do it. This is your ciliary body, and here is also ciliary body, and this is your iris, right? And these are zonules of Zen. So right, this is your anterior chamber. So a fluid, what is aqueous fluid or aqueous humor? Fluid which is present between lens and cornea, right? It is a white fluid which is present between lens and cornea. Done. Then what is the amount of this fluid? How much is its total amount? Its amount of 0.3 to 0.4 ml. It's very, very less in amount. So this fluid is present here, which is which is having an amount of 0.3 to 0.4 ml. And this fluid, you know that it is when everywhere there is a fluid present, that fluid applies some pressure, right? Why the cornea having a shape of like this? Because from here these fluids apply pressure on the cornea to keep the cornea in its position and to give special shape to the cornea. So they apply pressure. So this aqueous fluid also applies pressure, and that pressure is from 10 to 21 mm of Hg, millimeter of mercury. The pressure of aqueous humor is this one. Now where is the fluid present? What is its location? So as I told you, this fluid is totally present in the aqueous chamber, and aqueous chamber is divided into posterior chamber and anterior chamber. So we say it is present in the anterior plus posterior chamber plus posterior chamber of what? Of aqueous chamber. Aqueous chamber. Right, friends. And who produce it? Production. Who is responsible to produce it? I will go into the detail, but right now I'm telling you that these ciliary processes, right? If I make it a little bit in larger, These are the ciliary processes as we had discussed, and these ciliary processes have certain ciliary epithelium, right? Some epithelial cells are present here which are non-pigmented. So these ciliary epithelium produces this aqueous humor. So I will write it here, then I will go into the detail that how it is it produced. So production, it is produced by epithelium of ciliary processes, right? And what is the rate of its production? You know that every fluid in our body is produced and drained out of the body. So is the case for this aqueous humor. Why? Because whenever this fluid is produced into the anterior or posterior chamber, right, on both sides, on all sides of the eye, this moves to the anterior chamber, and from anterior chamber there is a drainage system which drains this fluid. And if this fluid is drained, there should be an equal supply again, right? So we say what is the rate of production of this fluid in 1 minute, right? We talk in 1 minute how much aqueous humor is present. So it's about 2.5 to 2.6 microliter per minute is the production rate of it, right? So the total amount is 0.3 to 0.4 ml, right? We know this. If we measure all this fluid, that will be 0.3 to 0.4 ml. But every minute 2.5 to 2.6 microliter is added, and the same amount is drained out, right? So from here addition occur, and from here drainage occur, right? And then what are the functions of this fluid? This fluid, we know that it should play very important functions. First of all, it plays an important role in physiologic intraocular pressure. The first function of this fluid is the physiologic intraocular pressure, right? Second function of this fluid is that it gives shape, it maintains the shape of your aqueous chamber, or we say it helps in the maintenance of the shape of the eye, right? So we just write it here, it helps in shape of eye. And the next important point and importance of it is that it supplies nutrition to the cornea and to the lens, right? You know that there, as we had discussed, that there is anterior epithelium of your lens, right? And that epithelium must be provided with proper nutrition. And you know that your cornea is made up of 5 layers that we have already discussed. So this fluid, this aqueous fluid is important. Why? Because it supplies nutrition to the cornea and to the anterior aspects of your lens. So let me write it here, it supply nutrition to lens and cornea. Done, my dear friends. Okay, so these were some basics about the aqueous humor. Now we go into the detail of it, that how the aqueous fluid is produced. How produced? Let's go into the detail. First of all, let me make a diagram here. Who produces it? We have said that epithelium of ciliary processes. So we should have here ciliary processes. Then we will go into the detail of it. Right, my dear friends. Okay, this is your ciliary body, and you know that anterior surface of anterior or superior surface of the ciliary body is somewhat smooth, and the posterior and anterior side of it has certain plications, right? So we call it pars plicata, and this area is plane, so we call it pars plana. And you know that there is your iris, right? So done. Then you know that there was the major arterial circle, right? Major arterial ring, and this ring was made by the posterior long ciliary artery, right, which was coming, and I have discussed all of them in detail. Posterior long ciliary artery, and from the muscular branches there is anterior ciliary artery, and this anterior ciliary artery also helps in making the major arterial ring, and from this major arterial ring there were the branches going towards the iris, and here was your minor arterial ring. So we have discussed them in detail, we don't need to discuss them. Now look carefully, from this major arterial ring and from this long ciliary artery there are some capillary loops which come towards these these ciliary processes. So these are those capillary loops which come towards them, and they make the vascular stroma of your ciliary body, like this, right? So these are the capillary loops. Let me write them here. Capillary loops, and these loops are responsible to make what? They make the vascular stroma of ciliary body. Done, my dear friends. And we also know that here are the non-pigmented epithelium of your ciliary body, right? Here are these epithelial cells, and these epithelial cells are responsible to make the aqueous humor, right, my dear friends? These are the nuclei of these cells. So we are going to discuss the steps of production of the aqueous fluid. That will be so simple for us. Here is your lens, you know. This is the lens, right? And you also know that the lens is suspended through the zonules of Zinn into the plications of your ciliary body, the ciliary processes. So we are not going to attach them there. First of all, let's produce the aqueous humor, and we say that we have divided the production of this aqueous humor into different steps. And what are those steps? Let me write here. Steps. The first step is the actively transport of the sodium from these. Look, these blood vessels will bring the water and minerals and nutrients to the vascular stroma, you know well, right? So from here, substances are diffused into these epithelial cells, you know well. And from here, my dear friends, there are special type of pumps, and these pumps will use energy and will secrete what? They will secrete sodium into the posterior chamber. So the first step is the active transport of sodium, active transport of natrium, right? It's very easy. Look what I said. I have told you that in these vessels, in these vascular loops or vascular stroma, you know that the nutrients will be coming here, and now from here water and other substances will go towards these epithelial cells, and these epithelial cells will actively, by the use of energy, they will take the sodium and they will secrete the sodium into the posterior chamber of this aqueous chamber. You know, there is your cornea. This is your cornea, right? And here is your sclera. Let me complete my diagram. This is your sclera, right, friends? Okay, so the first step is the active transport of sodium. Now you know that whenever there goes the positive charges, right? Whenever there is the positive charges present, so with these positive charges some negative charges also like to come out. So the first step was active transport of sodium. Then the second step is the passive transport of passive transport of negative charges, right? I would say passive transport of negative charges. And what are these negative charges? Let me write here some negative charges. For example, chlorides, right? Chlorides in the form of Cl minus, and bicarbs, for example in the form of HCO3 minus. They will follow these sodium ions, right? So they will be passively transported without any use of energy. These will be transported here. I will write the composition of this aqueous humor later, but you should know first of all how is it produced. So there is the passive transport of the negative charges following the transport of the positive charges. So after positive charges, the negative charges come here. Now next important thing is that all these positive and negative charges will increase the osmolarity of this area, right? They will increase the osmotic pressure here. So the third step is what? The third step is an increase in osmotic pressure. So here in the posterior chamber of the aqueous chamber, the osmotic pressure will rise. Anywhere where the osmotic pressure rises, who comes first? Water comes, right, my dear friends? So who will follow then? H2O will follow then, and water will be coming here in huge amount, right? I will write the composition. So this increase in osmotic pressure will do what? Will increase the transport of water. Transport of water occurs, and when water comes here, then what happens? Along with water, some transport of some important other substances will be there, and those are the transport of glucose, right? Along with water, glucose molecules will come, right? Along with water, some proteins will come. I'll write here transport of special type of proteins will occur, right, friends? And we also see that there is the number 6, transport of vitamin C occurs, vitamin C, and some transport of urea occurs. Urea also comes here a little bit, right, my dear friends? So these substances are transported by the increase in osmotic pressure by these charges. So we said that the interior epithelium, right, the interior epithelium will first of all actively transport the sodium, and after the transport of sodium, the negative charges will follow the positive charges. When the negative and positive charges accommodate in this posterior chamber, they will increase in osmotic pressure. When the osmotic pressure is increased, they will pull water from these vascular loops or vascular stroma. Water will be pulled into the posterior chamber. So here is a lot of water present, a lot of charges present, a lot of organic substances are present also here, right? So we have brought the very special type of fluid, and that fluid is called the aqueous fluid or aqueous humor, right, friends? Now a little bit about the composition of this aqueous fluid. What is the aqueous fluid composed of? Let us write here. Composition. The aqueous fluid is a composition of aqueous fluid I'm talking about. Aqueous fluid is composed of two different parts. The first one is water, right? We know water comes, and the second one is certain solids which come there, and some ions also comes there. Water is about 98.7% is water, and about 1.3% is solids, right? And in this solids, what is present there? In solids there are organic substances, and some inorganic substances present there, right? In case of organic substances, we know what is there. There are glucose is there, albumin is there. Albumin is a protein. There are globulins. Globulins are there, right? There is vitamin C. There is urea present, right? All these substances are coming along with the water. And in case of inorganic substances, what are there? There are the sodium charges, there are the calcium comes, magnesium also present there, chlorides, and we have HCO3 minus bicarbonates are there, right friends? Some potassium ions are also present there. So what is the actual composition of your aqueous humor, aqueous fluid? It is composed of 98.7% water and 1.3% solid substances. The solid substances are organic and inorganic, and these are the organic and these are the inorganic substances. So we have discussed about the how the aqueous humor is produced. Now the aqueous humor will do what? It will accommodate here in the posterior chamber, and from the posterior chamber this aqueous humor is produced by what? It is produced by the ciliary, the epithelium of the ciliary processes, right? We have written here. And what is the production rate per minute? 2.5 to 2.6 microliter is produced, right? It is produced and goes through the pupil to the anterior chamber, and it accommodates into the anterior chamber, right? And from anterior chamber it is drained by the drainage system, which I will talk in the next video about the drainage of the aqueous chamber of the aqueous fluid. The aqueous fluid will drain into the canal of Schlemm and then to the veins of the eye and then towards the body. So this was about the production of the aqueous humor. I hope you like the lecture. In the next lecture we will discuss about the drainage of the aqueous humor. So thank you for watching these videos. And my dear friends, it's a humble request that if you have learned something from these lectures, please invite your friends also to our channel. See you in the next lecture. Till then, Allah Hafiz.